Matchbox can become Tinder, Kibble can become Netflix, Backrub can become Google, and Foodie Bay can become Zomato, then why can't Facebook change its name? In today's video, I'm going to tell you why it's not that easy. Hey folks, I am CSK and I am your personal coach. You're watching me today on my channel, CSKSpeaks. Let's get started with why it is not easy for Facebook to get rid of its image and embrace the new name. Well, to understand this, I need to tell you a story. And this story is not from our current times. It goes back into the ages. It seems there lived a king, and the king was diagnosed with a peculiar kind of an infection. He used to develop rashes and create issues every single time he got exposed to the sun or to the outside world. So what happened was he tried to consult many doctors. He in fact went about meeting a lot of people, taking their advice and indeed getting into medication. But all those efforts did not give him the desired results. It ended up in aggravating his infection, his irritation, and he had no solution. Finally, after all the trials and errors, he finally came across a Japanese monk. People said that this monk has healing powers. And the king went about consulting the monk, and the monk gave a simple advice. He said, you know what? All you got to do to get rid of this infection and this condition of yours is to expose yourself only to the color green. Now, the king thought for a while and he said, is it so simple? And he comes back to his kingdom, calls his ministers and generals and give them one clear instruction. Paint the entire world green. Because the king wanted to get a solution so desperately, so badly, that he just did not wait to think, and he just said, go ahead and paint the entire world green. Now the king's order is like a sermon. People went about it, following it very religiously. And before you could realize, everything around, everything in that world where the king lived turned green. Finally, 6 months later, the king is finally healed and he wants to celebrate. He wants to celebrate this victory over that dreadful infection, so he summons the monk. Says, come join me for the celebrations. Monk lands in the kingdom and he's surprised and shocked to see everything in the kingdom green. He makes his way quickly to the king, and the court is also green. The entire darbar hall or the meeting place, the palace is completely green. So the monk waits for his turn to meet the king, and when the king finally turns up, he looks to the king and asks, what have you done? Now, the king in turn replies, I just did what you asked me to do, and I have turned everything green, including the gown which you are wearing right in front of me. I know that my people would have already forced you to get into this robe, green robe. So same as what you said, I have followed, and today you see I am out of that infection and I am ready to celebrate, and that's the reason why I wanted you to join me today. So the monk, unable to comprehend this entire stupidity, makes a remark. And he says, well, all you had to do was to buy yourself a pair of green glasses. Because when you could put on a pair of green glasses, you would have got fresh new eyes, and thereby everything you looked around would have automatically turned green, isn't it? Now, listening to this remark of the monk, the king didn't know what to do. He was embarrassed to his bones. People in his empire, people around, started beating their head as to what have they done without thinking about and going and painting the whole world green. Well, that was a story from yesteryears, but coming to today we have one other attempt being made in painting the entire world maybe blue. That's what Facebook is trying to do. But those days it was autocratic rule. King was supreme. He could decide and go about it even if it was stupid. But today, in this sophisticated and democratic world, it is not possible to simply paint it blue. So what the founders and the makers of Facebook have come up with is to gift you and I, to gift each one of us a pair of glasses. And they want to gift us a pair of glass so that we can see their universe, in this case metaverse, through those glasses. Metaverse or meta, interesting term, isn't it? For the very first time, metaverse was coined by Neil Stephenson in that path-breaking sci-fi book Snow Crash in 1992. In fact, many times Zuckerberg has used this particular word in his interviews and interactions across the world. But today, as the world is gearing up for the new identity of Facebook, is it all about just changing the name, or is there something more to it? Now, to understand that and why I said that it is not that easy for Facebook when Google can reinvent itself from Backrub, or Matchbox can become Tinder, or Netflix, the most popular Netflix was earlier called Skibble. But why is it so difficult for Facebook? It is difficult because if you're looking at just a rebranding exercise and just to shred your negative image of ethical violation and privacy invasion, then I think they have got it wrong, because people don't forget these things so easily. It's not Facebook alone. History has given us many examples. There is this company, or there used to be a company called Blackwaters USA, the private military organization, which was known for all, or rather infamous for all the dreadful sins on this planet. And what they did was something which we are seeing today. They just reinvented themselves, or they thought they reinvented themselves by giving themselves a new name called Z Services. Blackwaters USA and Z Services, no connection, but they thought just by reinventing into a whole new name, they can alienate themselves from that negative image which they had garnered for their private militia. So there are many examples. But what Facebook is doing today, if it is just rebranding, then I'm afraid it will not stick. What is required right now, or more important, is revisiting and rebuilding Facebook. And when I say rebuilding Facebook, I can't stop but think about examples like the Royal Mail Service. What Royal Mail Service did in 2001 is another example of failed attempt of rebranding. Royal Mail in 2001 spent £2 million. And not just £2 million, they got rid of a 500-year-old legacy to come up with a new name. And when they came up with the new name, the world did not accept it. Now, well, what is a new name? I'll leave it for you to find out, because I don't want to give you all the answers. So when they got that new name, public panned it out. And when public panned it out, they spent another 16 months to go back to the old name, which was Royal Mail Service. So what Facebook needs to do today is not just mere rebranding, but they got to rebuild their image and rebuild the whole concept. They just cannot get away by changing the name. They got to change the game. And the game they play now should be like, for example, our very own Indian Airlines. I will definitely make another video on Indian Airlines and the great legendary J.R.D. Tata's journey in creating the Maharaja. But today, that's not the topic of our conversation. We come back to Facebook, but what has happened with Indian Airlines in the recent past is what I am going to talk to you here. Government-owned enterprise now suddenly is changing hands to private-owned enterprise, the Tatas. And with that, the whole set of restructuring will commence. And by the end of 2022, we know that Indian Airlines is not just going to be rebranding themselves, because they are not talking of changing the name, but they are rebuilding themselves by changing the internal structure. And what Facebook needs to do today is, as I said, not just change the name, but change the game. And the game comes with putting more and more emphasis on protecting privacy of people. More and more emphasis on creating a safe and a secure place for people. You may call it metaverse, you may call it another universe, but what we need is to create a place which is safe for interaction and transaction. Well, the definition of metaverse is all about creating a virtual space where people can game, work, engage, and interact with each other through different digital tools. Well, all that is fine, but we need to have a space which is free of invasion. Take an example of the mask. The mask, which has been our best friend for the last 15 odd months or 18 months and maybe for the next 2-3 years. What has happened with mask is mask gave us protection, mask gave us security, and before we realized, each one of us were reinventing color-coded masks. Different fabrics, different textures, different styles, and different sizes. So the public in this democratic and sophisticated world, they know what they want and they will take what they want, provided you create that universe. So if Facebook is looking at creating a metaverse, my suggestion is not focusing on changing the name, but change the game. As the king did without thinking that he painted the whole world green, today what Facebook and founders of Facebook are trying to do is to gift us a pair of glasses so that we can see blue. I will say, don't waste time either painting or gifting. Rather, focus all your attention and time in creating. And if you can create something of value to people, people will automatically converge and seek citizenship in your universe which you are intending to create. Give me your opinion if you agree with my thought process on this particular issue. I look forward to hearing your feedback and comments on this video. Till next time, thank you so much and keep watching CSK Speaks.